I'm George from Pavliscak Studios, and I'll be making a glass marble today. I'm going to make a tube marble. There's probably another name for it. I guess a lot of people might call them Vortex. I'm not quite making a Vortex. I guess I could. I'm going to start. It's all going to be made out of glass rods. I've got some materials that I've prepared in advance. Mostly the marble will be clear, but there'll be a thin layer of color, and that within that thin layer of color is going to be color, sparkle, and UV glass. So it's going to be about this much of the rod with a small portion of that getting decorated and then covered over, and then you'll be able to look through the tube and see the inside of the marble at the same time as you're looking at the outside of the marble. So a tube marble. I have a style that's rotated on 2 axes. I call a Mobius because you can follow the outside surface and the inside surface in a sort of a figure 8 pattern. The most common way you see this design is you see half of the tube as a vortex, where you have a sort of a funnel that you're looking in, and the inside of the funnel is decorated and the outside of the funnel has a different decoration. And we could probably do that too, but I think it's kind of more interesting to see the whole tube and then be able to look through it. It's kind of something that I really haven't seen other marble creators do, and I think it has a lot of possibilities. So let's get started. Find my eyewear. This keeps UV and sodium flare out of my field of vision. It protects my eyes. I'm using a propane oxygen torch, which gets hot enough to melt the glass that I'm working with. I've got some tiny glass threads prepared, different colors, a set of colors for the inside, a set of colors for the outside, and then I have some aventurine glass that I've encased and pulled down into threads, which is basically sparkly copper dust. And then some ceramic glow powder encased in clear glass. And sometimes if you heat that up even, you can see it has enough energy to glow. This didn't, but it did bend. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with a gather that's clear. We're going to get to the size we want for the core. We're going to decorate, do the inside design, cover that with the base color, then do the outside design, then cover the whole thing in clear. There's actually quite a lot of fiddly work where you're defining the edges of the lines so that they look clean, and I'll explain that as I go. So for now, let's get this large clear gather in the middle going. I'm going to flash the rod to bring it up to temperature slowly so it doesn't just explode when I stick it into the fire. What I'm going to do, since this is a cut end, once it starts getting hot, I'm going to get in with a tweezer and clean up any impurities and oxidation marks that are on the end. And then I'm going to attach a steel handle, and then I'm going to come farther off and melt it, and then shape that cylinder to the shape that I want the core to be, and then start decorating it from there. The rod's now hot enough that I don't have to flash it anymore. And the corners are starting to round. Normally, when you see me make a marble, and I'm using a big rod like this to get it gather, I'll start making it so a giant ball forms on the end. I don't really need a gather to be that big at this point. I just want it to be cleaned up so that I can attach a metal handle to it. And that metal handle is going to be my attachment point for this marble for quite a while, because I'm going to melt it off here, reshape the center core, do my inner, median, and outer decoration, cover it again, and that's going to take a while. So I'll try to keep it moving here. Heat this up till it's yellow hot, and then bore it into that clear 1/16 of an inch. Then I'm going to bring the heat down the rod here, down to here, just so that I'm not immediately trying to melt off a big section of the rod, which would lead to it shattering in an unpredictable and unfun way. Breaking stuff is fun. Breaking hot, sharp things in your face, not as much. So you can see, I can even like start compressing this rod a little bit to make it bigger in diameter. I don't really need to do that. That's a fun technique though, to be able to take a rod and start almost injecting it into itself to increase the diameter of something. That's an excellent technique to increase the size or add clear into an area without adding like layers of dots, which add little bubbles and impurities to the glass. So if you want to keep it clean, you can inject encapsulate, or inject cover, inject case. There's a lot of different ways to say it. Whichever way you're saying it and works for you is correct. I was pushing on this as I was talking to you. You can see the rod has dug into the clear glass rod a little bit. I don't want that to happen. But it did. I will deal with it in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and melt this off. I would probably normally make a slightly larger clear core than what I've got going here, but I think if I keep it a little bit smaller, I can show you in the magnifying glass, and it will cut way down on the amount of time it will take to heat and shape and demonstrate all the techniques that I want to show you about making a tube and decorating the inside and outside of that tube and then turning it into a marble. So I've got the glass I want for the core. It's a weird shape. I'm going to shape it into a cylinder. I pushed it a little bit too far onto this handle. I'm going to pull it back a little bit and reshape it. So I need to add some heat. I'm clearing a little space. In the pre-show, I showed you a little bit about my work area, and right next to the fiberboard where I... hi, Barb.
Hi.
The fiberboard where I polish my final attachment point, I have a carbon graphite marver plate, and I'm going to use that to reshape this gather as a cylinder.
Marver plate.
Yes, and I'm demonstrating like a Vortex tube base, like I make my Mobius marbles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to probably go all the way to the end, just because that takes forever.
Vortexes are so cool.
Mm-hmm. So, but here I'm going to make the complete tube. A vortex is like half a tube, more like a funnel. And that's like, everyone does that. This is the cool way that only I do. Super,
Awesome.
super secret, fun.
Awesome.
So, you're probably not staying out here because it's kind of hot.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks for visiting.
You're welcome.
I can't, since
Hi,
I rebooted my phone, it doesn't show me who, I can't see my messages on here.
Oh.
Or who is.
I can turn it on and watch it while I'm sitting inside and make sure people's questions get...
Only if you want to. Otherwise, I'll come back and answer questions right afterwards.
Don't drop your marble, dude.
So,
You're looking kind of droopy.
I know, it's really hot, which is what I want to do my shaping here. But I moved it off the handle. I had accidentally pushed it too far on because I was blabbing when I was doing it. So now it's looking good. I'm just going to finish a little bit of shaping here, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the... I'm going to decorate the inside of the tube. So this is like the negative space of the tube here, just is clear. And so before I start putting, the decoration's going to be stripes. And what I want to do is, since it's really hard to start and end stripes with a little thread precisely, I'm going to make a band around each end to define the edge of the tube, the ends of the tube. And so then I can put the stripes in, and the ends will automatically be perfect. So I'm going to touch or gather and pull it around. So I added that stripe. That's going to be one of the edges of the tube. I'm going to do that on the other end of the tube, the one that's away from the handle attachment. And then the area in between is going to be the length of the tube that will be decorated. And the nubs on the end are going to be the windows to look into the tube. So now I've made the ends of the tube. I'm going to heat that glass in and then give it a little roll on the marver plate, pushing it down with a paddle at the same time because it's kind of bulbous right now, and I'd like it a little flatter, that's all. There's no other reason other than I want it that way. I could decorate it with it being bumped up like that, but I'd rather not. So there, I flattened it. And I'm going to decorate the spots in between those two end bits. So I'm going to do the inside decoration in red, yellow, and orange with aventurine and a little bit of glow powder. So let's get some yellow, and I'm going to I turn my torch down to a pencil point. So I'm going to heat up the tip of the thread, pick my starting point, and then heat the glass as I attach it to the cylinder. And you can see I laid down a little line between those two black stripes. Now, I think what's going to happen here is there's going to be a lot of stripes in there. So I'm going to do 4 equidistant stripes of yellow. Now I'm done with yellow, so I can get that out of my way. Now, in between those, actually, divided in quadrants of 3, I'm putting red for the next 4 stripes. I'm going to heat my marble back up. You don't want to let your whole marble, and especially your attachment point, get too cool. Cracks can form, and once things get cold enough, using this kind of glass, Moretti glass, Italian crystal, it's almost impossible to salvage without having a big bubble in whatever area has cracked. Alright, so there's my yellow and my red stripes sort of grouped together, and now in that space in between, I'm going to put down the orange, and then in between some of those, I'm going to put aventurine, and in between some of those others, I'm going to put some UV glass or glow glass. So there's all the colors. Now let's put in a little aventurine. Let's put in 4 stripes. So 1, 2, 3. No, let's put in 1 extra. And let's heat up our marble. Now this should be dark blue glow powder. I had a little bit of my oxygen tank left this morning, and I wanted to have a full one for the demonstration today. So I spent an hour just doing prep work and pulling stringers and stuff this morning, then took my tank down to the welding shop where I get them refilled. Alright, so now you can see I've added some aventurine sparkly stripes in between some of the color. And now, any place where there's a wider gap, and maybe 4 stripes worth, I'm going to put in this glow powder stripe. All right, now we have decorated it. It's beautiful. All right, now I'm going to cover it all up with black, so you'll never see it again, except through the windows on the end. You can almost see some of the stuff now. I mean, I can see it. Hard to tell if you'll be able to see it in that magnifying glass. I think you can. So I want these decorations that I've made to be a little flat, because when I swipe case the hot end of the rod, I'm going to add black and a small amount as I can over top. But if this is all pretty flat, then I can do it without trapping a lot of air, because I don't want bubbles in there messing up my design. You know, maybe bubbles are fine. I don't know. Some people like bubbles. And there's some, like glass blowing I do, where I put in a matrix of bubbles, because bubbles also look nice in certain areas. And marbles, generally, try to stay away from bubbles, because I'm trying to showcase my ability to not get bubbles in there. Alright, so I put the first gather of black over top, covered a couple of those stripes. And I've covered from the first stripe I put down, the black stripe, to the end of the other black stripe. That was going to mark the end of the decoration. So now I'm just going to have to go around and do that about probably 10 times, 10 little swipes. There's 2 swipes. Let's see how far yet I have to go around. Now, if I don't pause between each one, I should be able to get one on one side. Then I'll go around to where things are cool and not going to move around on me underneath. If I do the one right next to the hot one I just put down, I run the risk of disrupting those lines and bending them around. And I would like my design that I took so much time to put in place to remain in place until I decide to twist it up and ruin it. No, I won't ruin it. I'll make it cool. I'll make it better. It'll be twisted and look the way I want it to. So now I've put on, I don't know, 8 swipes maybe? More than halfway around. It's kind of a cool view. Where you see it's covered, and here's the ones that we haven't covered yet. If I was going to vortex this, I would just be doing it on the end. And then I would close this end off like I was doing any sort of swirl where I wanted the polar end to all come in together as a point. And depending on the exterior decoration that I wanted on my vortex, I would do that either before I did my decoration on the outside or after. There's a couple of instances where I could think of for each way you want to do that. And if you were going to try making a couple vortexes, I would definitely try it both ways. And I would have an idea of what sort of decoration I wanted to do on the outside before I began. Because if you take all that time to make the inside design, then you don't want the outside to be boring. You know, you're not just going to mush it in frit or make a couple dots. You want something cool on the back to reflect the effort that you put in to make it a marble, which is something that you can appreciate from all angles and all sides, because it's a sphere. It's not a paperweight that you look at from, you know, a 180-degree angle, where the bottom is all where you hide your mistakes. If you make paperweights, then I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. I'm sure you don't have mistakes that you're hiding on the back of your paperweight. I would. So, all of our stripes are now buried under a layer of black. Now, in the inverse, I'm going to put all my stripes on of color and UV and aventurine glass, and then I'm going to define the ends by putting that last black stripe on to make sure all the ends of the stripes, decorative stripes that I put on, are an even line. A lot of times, if I was doing this and I had planned it, I would pull this down into a smaller thread to do that initial dividing line and that last dividing line, just because if you get a larger gather and you touch and you let it trail, the line's always a little bit uneven unless you're pulling a longer one, in which case you can get it nice for a longer period of time. But I don't know what I'm saying. I guess it's just, if you pull a thinner thread, you can be more accurate, or a thinner rod. So if I'm working a lot with a particular color, and I know I'm going to do a lot of different decorations with it, or I'm going to do something sculptural, I will come and do advanced work. I will take the rods of the normal size, and I will pull down like 3 or 4 different varieties of diameters, so that I can add exactly the amount of glass I want, or make a line exactly the thickness that I want, without introducing the small amount of chaos that comes with getting a big gather, doing an attachment point, pulling back, and then doing the line at the right diameter while the glass is hot. If you pull your rods in advance, then you can work with your same diameter decoration just by drawing a line rather than touching, pulling, and drawing. You really should, of course, practice and know both, because both are fun, both have their uses, and if you could show both techniques in one marble, then people will be very happy looking at your marble. Oh man, that's great. I can't wait to see what else this person does. Crazy, impossible, complicated designs. So I did purple, light blue, and dark blue stripes. And since the diameter of this is a little bit larger on the outside, I'm going to add a green. I love a dark green in that mix. And I got one. I have all those test tubes on the side of my wall that are full of different colors. And a lot of the test tubes are just that. They're just colors that I've pulled from rods or pieces to have the color at the ready. A lot of the test tubes, if you were to look at them carefully, you'd see that there's several different colors in one test tube, or they're like special stringers that are cased or have 3 layers in them. And those are for making specific marbles. Like a few months ago, I was making a lot of this particular kind of flower, and so I pulled all these threads that were specific to that flower. So here I've put in all the colors: light blue, dark blue, green, and purple. And now I'm going to put in a little bit of the glow glass. And I'm going to put in some sparkly aventurine. Some, not a lot. Do 4 stripes. I think I did 4 stripes of the glow glass. Now, to make sure all of the all those stripes, you can see the ends. They're pretty much starting and ending where they're supposed to. So if I wanted to clean them up, I would come back with a stripe of black and cover all those over. And since I told you I was going to do that, I'm going to do that. These are actually, most of them are ending even enough where I could probably not do that, because once I start twisting the tube through the pole of the center, the ends are going to clean up a little bit on their own, because twisting, if the twist is even, it's going to even up the design. I'm going to sort of let these pull in one time on their own. I'm going to reheat it and let them pull in a little bit more on their own. And I'm going to give them a little bit of a roll on the marble plate. I don't want to press them all the way in, but I don't want them to pull all the way in either. So when you first have a thread attached to a surface, it's most of the area of the thread is exposed, and then there's a little narrow juncture where it attaches to the cylinder. And so I want that whole area to become more of a hill, a dome, rather than like a rod laying next to a larger diameter rod. It's probably hard to visualize. Alright, so the back end is pretty even, so I'm not going to mess with that. The front end was a little bit uneven, so you see I put a black stripe, even the ends. I'm just going to melt that in, and then I'm going to coat the whole thing, the whole opaque decorated area, with a little bit of clear. And I'm going to take a rod, like a 10mm rod, which is quite a bit smaller than the rod I was using for the core. I'm going to use that to case over that decoration. I'm going to marver that in a little bit more, but I can do that with one hand while I'm preheating this rod. So I'm flashing this rod like I flashed the bigger rod. Then I'm turning this. Can't stop it turning or it'll start to flop down. Little marver. So flashing this again. There's a lot going on here. Everything's going different. Alright, I think my core and my decoration is pretty smooth. So I'm going to let all the surfaces firm up, so when I start doing swipes of clear to coat it, I'm not going to mess up the design. I want the surface to be hot enough so that when it joins the clear rod, it's not making bubbles or impurities or any of the sort of frosty white scum or oxidation that can happen when you put together glass of different temperatures. So having a temperature comfort zone between the two glasses that are going to be joined is important, at least for this brand of glass. And this is the one that I've used for many, many years. When I first started doing torch working, you could either use Moretti, which had colors, or you could use borosilicate, which at the time didn't have any colors. It was like 5 years later that they started developing more colors. If you wanted colors in boro, you could do fuming, or you could have like greenish black, and that was about it seemed. There were some striking colors, I guess. Alright, so that's smooth and shows my outside cylinder decoration. Let's start getting some clear on there. See, I put a pretty big clear gather over some of that decoration. I And so we're going to have to do that about 8 more times. Get some stuff up here on this rod. When you're using the bigger ready rods, a lot of times they'll like get crackly further down from the gather, and all those crackles as you melt start translating into tiny bubbles. So you have to go back and peel the rod and get those out. So I just put down a second gather. And now I'm going to put down a couple more in pretty rapid succession. Hello!
Hey, do you know where 2 of 2 went? He left the house and took the card. I don't know where he went.
Jackson?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. Did he take the silver card?
Yep.
Oh, he probably went back over to Aaron's.
Okay.
But no, he didn't say anything to me.
Okay. No delving questions have arisen yet.
Okay. Yes, when I talked to Jackson earlier, we were only talking about a video game.
Got it.
So nothing pressing.
Okay.
Alright, so let's see, I put about 4 gathers on there. That's 5. Looks like I need 3 or 4 more. It's starting to look like the size of marble that I like to do on my torch when I don't have my furnace running. When my furnace is running, I tend to do marbles like this size and up to another ½ inch in size. The torch anywhere between like a 5/8 inch flower and up to like 1 1/4 inch is a nice, because you have to be able to put enough heat in it to make everything move. And if you're going to do smaller than 5/8, you want to switch to a smaller torch. So I use this. This is a mid-range Nortel surface mix torch, which I like. I have a bunch of others. This one is versatile for the way that I work. I do a lot of tiny, weird-shaped beads, and then, like I said, marbles from 5/8 to 1 inch, probably 1 1/4 inch mostly. Although you can pump this thing up a couple gears and go all the way up to 2 1/4 marble. I guess that's all I have to say about that. Had something weird on here and got a big impurity stripe. I think it's from that glow powder. I'm going to put some more clear over it, just because I think it's going to cause me a surface problem later, and so I'd rather have a lot of clear over that glow powder, which is kind of a ceramic product. It's kind of like encasing something that doesn't want to be part of your project. Stubborn. Mixing oil and water. And so, but the amount is it's a trace amount, so it's not really interfering with the compatibility or the coefficient of contraction once the marble starts cooling. But as you're constructing, it wants to pop out sometimes and mess up your surface. Alright, so the construction of this marble is essentially complete. It's a clear core. I put down a bunch of decorative stripes for the inside of the tube. I put down the base color of the tube as the middle layer. Then I decorated the outside of the tube, leaving a demarcation line at the ends of each tube. Sometimes if I'm making these fancier, that I will even put an additional decoration right on the edge of the tube, like a twisted cane, or a twisted cane with some more UV and aventurine stuff in it, so that it really defines the edge of the window as you're looking in to the inside of the tube. I mean, and you can always add more detail as you go. You could even put surface detail over top of this whole cylinder, but I mean, we want to be done in an hour, so. So I'm going to clean up the end that's not attached to the handle and make it a little more rounded and smooth. And that is going to be the finish surface of the marble, although I'm going to have an attachment point there so that I can twist this whole thing. So I want it to come, you can see it's rough right now, and I want it to get more lens-like. So to make it more lens-like, I don't want to push it into the final shape. I want to sort of coax it into the final shape, like that. And I'm going to come back and clean that a little bit, but right now I'm going to switch my handle to that unattached side, and then go back and round this side, reattach my handle, and then start twisting that tube. But you'll really see the definition of the tube come out as soon as I switch my handle to the other side and start rounding up that second polar region, second end of the cylinder region. So get that up, pull it out. And I've got some steel dust in the end. You can see it. There's a little red glowing orange. I'm going to go pull that out. That metal handle had been attached to the marble since we first started making the core. So that was a handle in there for a good long time. But it was hot, and some of those steel, iron particles, atoms, had started migrating through the clear glass, and you can see them. And so now I've gone back and it's just clear. So let me reshape it a little bit. Now you'll really be able to see it's a little bit peanutty right now, peanut shaped. But I'm going to even it out as a cylinder with nice ends, and then I'm going to start twisting it. You can see all the decorative lines from the outside, and then if you look through the window, you can see the decoration on the inside. The window's not very good right now. When the surface is finished and it's a lens as the side of the marble and the end of that tube, you'll be able to see right through it. So since it's a little bit pear-shaped, I'm going to try to even it up on my marble plate. So I got to get it hot enough so it'll actually move. And the heat has to be even enough so that when it does move, it moves throughout the whole shape and not just on one side. And I can see with my torch working glasses that the heat is just still a little bit uneven. It's evening out now. You can see how it's orange, and there's like a little spot that's not so orange right there. Now that it's even, the whole thing should move smoothly and symmetrically. cylinder shaped. All right, now I'm going to reattach my steel putty onto the other side. And when I'm attached, I'm going to twist the whole thing evenly, giving the tube a sense of motion, because this is nice, but static. We don't want that. We want this marble to look like it's moving, even when it's sitting still, like a race car. Alright, so I got my handle on both sides. Now I want the decorated portion to spin. The ends aren't going to do anything if they spin, because that's just clear glass. So they can be a little bit firmer. I want to put all the heat I can into the marble, into that middle 2/3 of the cylinder. And I really want just the top half of the surface, from like the surface towards the core, just that half to be spinning. The middle doesn't have to spin. It can. So once this is even, I'm twisting the whole thing evenly on right and left side. Now that I want spin to start going in there, I'm going to spin on one side and let the other side catch. And as I'm heating it, I'm looking at my design. I'm just putting in tiny amounts of twist, like just a couple degrees at a time. Very little. As you can see, spin is starting to happen on the surface of the design. And I don't really want a lot of spin here. I want some. Maybe not even one full revolution. Like part of one. And as even as you try to get the rotation, there's always room for improvement. But you don't want to overspin it, because then it'll make your design disappear. So now I've got spin in there, and you can see all the lines still. I wouldn't want to spin it too much more, because then the lines would be getting very thin. Now I'm going to take off the handle on this side. I'm going to heat the whole marble up and compress it into a more spherical shape. Oh, look all the way through. Can't see clearly because it's ripply on both sides. Now, to give it just a little twist in the other direction, Mobius styles, I'm going to switch my punting angles off. Now, it's this way. Coming off that little attachment point, you can see there's a little hot spot. That one angle. There's a a little orange. Get out there. So there's the window, 90 degrees off of where the original axis of spin was. Now I'm attaching the second handle. Now I can heat it up and twist that window into an oval shape. So I'm just evening the heat up. My attachment points are a little bit hot right now because my shape is a little bit cylindrical, more so than I would like it. I would have liked to go back and fix that first before I put this second axis twist on it. But this second axis twist will really let you see the inside of the cylinder, the tube, and will also impart that Mobius pattern where it's like a figure 8 that doesn't flip on itself so that you can't switch sides as you go around the figure 8. You stay on either the outside or the inside as you follow it, but it's still pretty neat. Now, without letting any heat get out of here, I need to get this more spherical because the shape is pretty wonky right now. As soon as I fix it, I'll be able to show you guys. You can see the inside designs as well as the outside. There, you're looking at the outside, and then now you're looking through, and then there is the inside. And that will resolve even better as it becomes more spherical, because the shape is just really terrible right now. I started with a shape that was kind of like a pill shape rather than a sphere shape, and so the design actually, or the shape, got really weird pretty fast when I started spinning it, and so I'm paying for my trying to hurry the earlier step by having to spend more time on this reshaping step. So did I save time? No. I should have done it the right way instead of trying to rush it. That was dumb. So, I never run out of dumb stuff to do. I'd keep a list, but then I wouldn't be able to go back and do that same dumb stuff in a year when I forgot about it, which I enjoy so much. Mistakes and doing stuff from a fresh perspective leads to cool things. So, trying to make everything perfect all the time is useful and makes for nicer looking things. But you also need that slightly messy approach to sort of be experimental and see what happens. Maybe, that straight line of having things correct all the way through is not the way to explore all the different aspects of the technique you're working on. You know, maybe shaping something into a stupid pill shape will help me figure out a design later. I don't know the answer to that. And maybe it was a genius pill shape. Yes, I think it was. We've decided. It was great. You were here for it. You helped me out. Inspired me to make the pill-shaped marble. Alright. Well, we're fixing it. It's taking a while. It's coming together now, though. Better. I switched punties to the other side once already. So if you work on one side, you improve it, and you switch your handle to the other side. Punty, sometimes I say interchangeably. Punty is what glass blowers say. It's the Italian word for bridge. Because you can't touch your marble, so you need something between your hand and the work. Punty. Since we're speaking English, I'm calling it a handle. Because that's what it is. And there's all kinds of different fun handles you can put on glass. There's steel. There's glass of the same type of the glass that you're manipulating. Back when I was first learning already, there were some people out who had been doing like Pyrex sculptural stuff like you see at the mall, where people were making like little horses and swans and stuff like that. And so rather than using steel, they were using a borosilicate putty rod to manipulate their soft glass for torch work. And this got put in into the vernacular for quite a while, but I think it was always a bad idea. I tried it, and you could always see the spot where the borosilicate attached to the soft glass, and it was a cleanup nightmare, and having two kinds of glass on your bench was just a bad idea. I'd be interested to know if there's anyone who still does that. It's kind of a weird intermediary technology that probably everyone else has forgotten about. And me too. So, I deny that knowledge. We never talk about it. This video will be deleted later. Finally. It's round. Okay, so now that this side is pretty spherical, I finally got that big seam out of there. Or did I? Almost. I'm going to have one more pass through these graphite hemispheres that I use for marble molds. What I do is I start with once the marble's hot, I sort of give it a light surface chill by going through a larger hemisphere than the diameter of the marble. Just using a light spin and not a lot of pressure. And then once the surface of the marble itself has firmed up, I switch to a hemisphere that's smaller than the diameter of the marble. So I'm just using the rim of the marble hemisphere, the graphite hemisphere. And then by using that rim and spinning the marble and changing the axis of rotation as I spin, that ring of the rim is evening out the radius of the marble on different axes and making it spherical. Now, that last pass through the large and the small hemispheres have smoothed the surface of my marble and shaped it into a sphere. Now there's just some surface ripples that I want to get rid of. So I'm going to heat the surface of the glass until surface tension pulls it smooth. I'm going to let it start to cool. Then I'm going to get out a cherry wood marble mold which is essentially just using the rims. It's basically holes drilled in a cherry wood board that's been soaking in water for years, so that when the hot marble hits the lightly burned edge of that hole drilled through the cherry wood, it's like a very fine-grained graphite mold that's infused with water. And that water comes out as steam and keeps the marble from sticking to that very fine graphite. And some might say that the marble is, or the whatever glass you're doing, is riding on a layer of steam. I don't think physically that's true, except for maybe in like a few instances. But it sounds good. So I'm going to use each of those little holes for just a few seconds, because I don't want to bore into the wood, but I want to use that graphite. And then you can see that they get dried out right where the hot marble hit them. And then this goes right back into the water. And that side is smooth. I'm just going to raise the temperature of the surface a little bit, because I'm going to use a thinner glass rod to do my final attachment point. And as I attach this to that, if this surface is too cold on the marble, it's not going to even make any sort of reliable joint between the surface of the marble and this rod. So, and I can kind of feel that attachment point is small, but with experience, you sort of can feel how tight those are. And sometimes you're wrong, and the marble will drop off and you'll have to chase after it. But really, I guess the only way to proceed is with confidence that you were right at that time, and you're just going to proceed on with your marble, because you can't not have an attachment point to your marble, and you have to do the work, and you have to be confident. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to complete it, and even if it proves unreliable, you can always go back and do it again. Unless, of course, it breaks into a million pieces, and then you can't. You have to start over again, but that's good practice. So, the first pass through, you can see the shape's a little bit off. So, I'm going to go through the marble molds again. It's too cool. And I can really see the outside design and the inside design. And I'm going to show you as soon as I get the shape a little closer. I don't want it to cool down when it's out of shape like this, because then it would take me twice as long to get it back in shape. So I'm in a bigger hemisphere, I'm in a smaller one. And I got even closer. I think I'll show you for a second. That cool window all the way through. And as you look through the window, if you look just down or up a couple degrees, you'll see all the decoration on the inside layer that we put on there. The red, the orange, the yellow stripes, the glow powder, the aventurine. And you can see the size of the size and the shape of the window we made looks more even too, since we twisted off on a second axis. It looks like a nice oval shape. And I could, if I had decorated around the edge of that oval, there you can see the inside decoration. Look at that. Color stripes, aventurine. Let's look at the other side. There you go. And then on the surface, if you back away, you can see all color stripes there. The colors are dark because everything is hot. The colors will resolve after the temperature comes down, I'd say below 180, 200 degrees. Certain colors will stay black longer. Some will resolve even at pretty high temperatures. And some colors don't change at all much. Alright, so I'm going to hit the cherry wood marble mold for this. Just using each rim of the mold a few seconds. You can see it keeps spinning after I let it go, and that means the sphericalness is pretty good. I can feel it's a little bit off. It looks really good. I just want to examine a little bit. Let's see. I don't think I'm going to make it any better than it already is. It's really close to perfect. But the design came out nice on the inside and the outside. So now I'm going to chill the area where that last handle is, the glass handle, from here. I'm going to do it over my fiberboard because it's going to, the marble is going to be free then. I'm going to take my torch, polish that last little attachment point, and I'm going to come back with the marble pliers, preheat those marble pliers, and pick up the marble and put it in the annealing oven. So I'm chilling it with the scissors. A little tiny glass bung jack came off right away. I'm going to pick up my torch, and I really heat that area strongly for a few seconds and then back off. And then really heat it strongly for a few seconds and back off. I just want to heat that attachment area, but not just that area, like the whole top, I'd say 30 degrees of that marble, and let it pull in. I'm heating it as fast as I can without oxidizing the surface, essentially, because I don't have a lot of time before the interior of the marble is going to start to cool. And before the interior of the marble starts to cool, I want to have it in the annealing oven, where it's going to sit at about 950 degrees for 2 hours. So, pre-bent wire hanger, I heat those up till they hit orange, then I let them come down to black. That's about the right temperature. Then I can pick up my marble. I'm going to transfer it over to the annealing oven. And I will quench those. You can hear it hiss. I always quench everything, metal, all tools. If I've been grabbing like glass, hot glass with my tweezers, I make sure those are quenched, just because when you go back to grab those tools, that heat can travel in metal ones. The graphite ones will immediately grab a lot of heat out of the marble, so you always treat your graphite like it's hot and hold it by the handles, because that can surprise you. Same thing like when you're grabbing glass rods, it's always best to try to put them down in a way so that when you're going to pick them back up, you have a clear view of an area where you're going to pick it up, where you're not going to grab it out of a pile of rough shards and broken rods. You're pretty sure that only the end was hot, so you have a nice cool place to grab. I always clean my bench at the beginning of the day, or the beginning of a run of a certain amount of marbles, just so that I'm not constantly fishing around for stuff. I want to have things where I can grab them. And, you know, sometimes working from a slightly messier bench is good for creativity. You're like, oh, maybe I'll try this because I haven't, I hadn't planned on doing that, but I'll do it this time and see how that works out, which is nice. But I think I spent probably the first 20 years doing it that way, and now mentally I'm working on some stuff that's a little bit in a different area than what I'm bringing together. I'm looking at like little pieces of the puzzle that are farther along or somewhere in the middle. So I don't want to have to think about what I'm bringing together. I want that planned out in advance so that I can work on just that little middle portion. Because that's where I'm finding the fun and the creativity. But sometimes, you know, just squishing stuff together is great. No matter how long you've been doing it, you're like, oh, let's just put stuff together and see what happens. It'll look cool. It's glass, of course it's going to look cool, and it'll be fun. Anyway, great to see you. I love doing these demos once a week. Even if I get pulled away from glass like all week, I can come back and make a marble or two, or I get jazzed in the morning and I'm like, oh, let's make marbles so that I know what I'm doing for tonight. Even though, you know, maybe only 10 people are going to come and see it, that's still a great motivating factor for me to come and keep up on my skills and keep up on my interest and keep you interested in the creative process. All right, I'm going to go and take a break, and then I'll come back and read any questions, and otherwise these will get posted on YouTube in the next day or two. And of course, always available to rewatch on Facebook Live for a month or 2 or 3, depending on how much I poke at them. All right, have a good night. Bye-bye.